Out of the Middle East, President Trump is planning an unprecedented pressure campaign targeting Tehran's oil and finances.
The commander-in-chief calling it economic D-Day as he warns any country that attempts to help Iran, threatening tremendous economic consequences.
Chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with more. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Overnight, President Trump announced what he is calling economic D-Day against Iran. The president indicated that any country around the world providing a lifeline to the Iranians could face economic consequences of their own. He called on allies to stand with the United States, posting to Truth Social, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale." On Wednesday, the president described the state of play amid reports that the United States is still overseeing vessels through a safe corridor to export millions of barrels of oil out of the Persian Gulf each day.
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the strait is open. A lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point. But right now, a lot of boats are coming through. The naval blockade has been extremely effective.
The Iranians have responded to the president's comments overnight, with Iran's foreign minister saying the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis. Unprecedented debt and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Regional intelligence sources tell Fox News there are growing indications of economic hardship inside of Iran as a result of the U.S. naval blockade and economic isolation. Reports indicate that inflation in Iran has reached 89%, with food prices up 164%. The conflict is clearly shifting to economic warfare. The question here, whether or not this pressure will ultimately result in a deal or a return to combat operations. Guys?
So we know, Trey, that UAE supplies 31% of Iran's imports, roughly $21 billion in 2024, and was destined to have 13% of its exports this year. And they've now cut off all trade after shooting at their ships one time too many with Iran. Is that significant?
It's very significant, and it's an indication that Gulf countries may start to take similar economic action against the Iranians. And remember what happened earlier this week. Iran reportedly launched 2 ballistic missiles at the UAE, triggering alerts there and sending millions of people to seek shelter. And they have routinely attacked a number of Emirati oil vessels off the coast there in the Persian Gulf over the past week. It's an indication that the Iranians are still launching attacks near the Strait of Hormuz. And while the president says the waterway is open, only about 10% of the vessels that are supposed to be passing through this critical waterway are actually making it out of the Persian Gulf. There is this parallel story that's quite important. The president has indicated to Fox News that they are still getting oil out of the Persian Gulf. And so they have a safe corridor to the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz, and they're able to export millions of barrels of crude oil each and every day. And this operation is expected to continue, and it's an indication that due to the U.S. naval blockade and the U.S. military presence in the region, they are still able to escort some of these vessels out of the Gulf.
Okay. And this, thank you, Charlie, at the top where the Persian Gulf is on that map. How does the president plan to squeeze them even harder? What would be ideal is to squeeze them so hard that they have to give up their nuclear weapons. They just say, fine, take them, we'll give them to you, we'll get them out of here because we're in such dire straits. But how much more? What else could the president do? Because he even said in that tweet yesterday, the Navy's gone, Air Force destroyed, military factories rebel, currency is worthless, country is hanging on by a thread. You mentioned inflation, you talked about food prices. What more could our president do?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have to look at the facts on the ground here. And when we step back and we look at the situation for the Iranians, much of their Navy was destroyed during Operation Epic Fury. Many of the production lines for the missiles and drones inside of Iran were targeted. But the Iranians still do have a military industrial base. They have missiles, drones, cruise missiles that they can use not only to attack the Gulf, but also U.S. forces in the region and possibly even Israel in the future. And so the U.S. military remains on alert. And you have one side of the coin here that is focused on military pressure, the U.S. naval blockade, and the ability of President Trump if he orders future strikes. On the other side, you have the economic warfare campaign. And this is you could look at this broadly like an onion. At the center here, you have the U.S. naval blockade, and this is preventing the Iranians from their critical lifeline, and that is their oil exports. But then you have secondary sanctions that are already in place, and there are discussions at the U.S. Treasury from Scott Bessent to try and target some of the countries that actually use Iranian oil, such as the Chinese and these companies that are still trying to find creative ways to get around the sanctions and the U.S. economic pressure. And that's part of the reason that President Trump last night ordered what he is calling economic D-Day, because he wants to send a message to countries around the world that if they try to skirt these sanctions or U.S. efforts to pressure the Iranian regime, that they will face economic consequences of their own.
So obviously, Iran has been isolated militarily and economically, and we're going to ratchet up the economic isolation now. Do you have any sense how long? It's kind of mind-boggling that Iran has managed to hang on, given the amount of isolation that they have faced over the last 8 or 9 months. Do you have any sense how long Iran can hang on with this kind of isolation?
We don't. And this is a game of who blinks first. And the Iranians feel confident in their position. But we have to look at their statements. They continue to make this threatening rhetoric from Tehran about their military capabilities in the region and the economic, what they consider warfare against their country. When we look at the Iranians, though, they have prepared for this reality. And we have to face the facts of the situation. Not only on a military front, they prepared this mosaic defense, ensuring that if their top commanders were taken out, that others could fill the shoes. And that's exactly what they have done. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, for example, over the past 2 months, they have not been so focused on finding a diplomatic off-ramp. Rather, they've been preparing for the possibility of a return to combat. And that means putting these hardline IRGC officials in positions where they can make decisions to threaten international shipping and put counter-pressure on the United States, its forces in the region, and Gulf allies. And that is exactly what is taking place. And that's part of the reason that you have seen this, what really feels like an endless cycle of statements and strikes in the Middle East with no end in sight.
Yep, I've got a million more questions for you, Trey. I guess it'll wait for next hour. I appreciate all the insight as everybody watches in the region. Trey Yingst, thank you.
Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
Meanwhile,
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.